never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
We're talking today with Mr. Bob Mulder of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Mr. Mulder, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where and when were you born, for instance?
Well, I was born at Blodgett Hospital, Grand Rapids, and lived on the southwest side of Grand Rapids on Olympia Street off from Granville Avenue.
All right. And what did your family do?
Well, my father had many jobs at that time. During Depression, he lost his house, which many of them did, but he managed to buy another one on the street across the street from where we had, and he had a relative that backed him up on that, so we stayed in the neighborhood. And I was born and raised there, and I went to the Southwest Christian School there. Dad every week had an envelope. I think there was at least 50 cents or something in it every week to get us through grade school. It was just my brother and myself. And from there I went to Grand Rapids Christian High. And the same way there too, my dad put up the money for that.
Okay. And then when did you graduate from there?
1947.
Okay. And then upon graduation, what did you do?
Well, I ended up being a painter. A cousin of mine wanted me to work with him, and so I spent one summer working for a regular painting company, getting some experience under my belt. But it was kind of a deal whereas I worked in a furniture factory during the winter months, which worked out fine. In the summer we painted outside, and which I enjoy, painting outside. Painted all types of buildings, the houses, barns, and whatever, even barn roofs. But it was a challenge. Made a living at it, and up to the time President Truman said I should be drafted.
Okay. Now, when were you drafted? Was that October of 50? Was that
October of 50.
All right. Now, the Korean War had been going on for a little while.
Yeah, that started in June of 50.
Right. Now, had you been paying attention to that or thinking you might get drafted?
No.
Just didn't worry about that at all?
No, didn't pay any attention to it. And
then did you know, were there people around you or people your age who were getting drafted already? Were you aware that was going on?
Not till I got drafted and had to go down to Detroit. And when I got on come back, had a physical and all that, but when we got on the bus to leave for the Army, then I met a friend that I knew from way back when I worked on the railroad. And so we got pretty much acquainted again, and ended up at Fort Sheridan there for a few days, and then they shipped us to Camp Adenberry, Indiana.
Okay. And what sort of facility was that?
Regular Army barracks and all that. In fact, we were in barracks that were waxed during the war because we had all tile floors. Not realizing those are floors a lot harder to keep up than these wooden floors, because you could leave black marks on these floors here. But that's where we had our basic training.
Okay. Now, what did basic training consist of for you? What did they make you do?
Well, the regular Army basic training, but we also had some medical experience. We had classes on that, first aid and all that.
Now, so was this a particular program for people who were going to be medics? Had you already been assigned to something?
How we were assigned was kind of funny because when we got there, this car here, passenger cars, you go to the motor company. This car here goes to the medical company.
Okay.
And that's why I became a medic. But we did we did, a lot of guys got out of the medical company because they didn't want nothing to do with it, and we had in turn got guys that were in pre-med or something, which worked out fine too, but I stuck it out.
Okay. Now, were they giving you sort of just sort of regular sort of school classes and things like anatomy and that
Right.
sort of thing?
But it was basically quick because they were hurting because the time had come around Christmas time, which was I was already in there for a couple months. They had everybody out in the field, and the general come up there and start speaking. Says, half of yous are going home for Christmas, and the other half are going for New Year's. Well, when they heard that, this is unusual, there was snow on the ground. He actually got fired with snowballs.
You had recruits throwing snowballs at a general?
At the general.
Okay. What happened? Did anything happen to those guys?
No,
or?
no, because they couldn't pinpoint anybody. But then they were mad because they figured it was going to be gone for at least 2 weeks. But no, we each had a week, and back to basic training again, January and February, and in the February it was considered done already because situations were not getting any better in Korea.
Right. Now, while you were going through basic training, was there a lot of emphasis on discipline and kind of learning the Army way of doing things?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And how did you respond to that?
Okay. Yeah.
And did you get yourself into trouble and sent off to KP and that sort of thing?
No.
Were there fellows around you who were having more trouble with it than you were?
Oh, I remember one guy, might have been in before, I don't know, but he took extra leave and more than what he should because he had problems at home, so he said. But after we were embarked on our way to Korea, that's the last I ever see him, so I don't know whether they got court-martialed or thrown in the clink or what.
But on the whole, they weren't very interested in having people wash out at that point.
No,
They kind of needed all of you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, did you get any advanced training anywhere else before shipping over to Korea, or did they just send you right out?
They sent me right out.
Okay.
Because the company later, I found out, they sent him to Texas to get more training. Of course, I was already on my way to Korea then.
So how do you figure you're going to Korea and the people you trained with went somewhere else?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why that happened?
No,
You just,
I have no idea.
you just got your orders and that's what they
Right.
said. All right. Now, how did they get you over to Korea? What's the travel?
Well, we got on a troop train from Camp Adenberry and went straight to Seattle. And I happened to be on a car, on a Pullman, where I I could have a sleep in and a window. I was one of the few. I could have sold that several times
Right.
because people wanted to play cards there. That was the only car like that. The rest of the cars were you had
Regular
to sit.
passenger cars? Yeah.
You had to sit all the way over there, and they were probably World War I cars. I know the kitchen was anyway, because they had coal stoves to cook the food on.
All right.
And they had one flat wheel on that thing, and it could plunk, 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 plunk all the way to Seattle.
About how long did it take to get out to Seattle?
I think it was about 2 or 3 days.
Okay. Now, once you get there, did they load you up into transports pretty quickly, or did you have to sit around for a while?
We had a chance. This ended up there on a weekend, and they gave passes out to half of them. When they got out to M, they stopped giving passes out. And everybody under M got passes. Of course, that didn't
that
go
the
over
Mulder
too
you
good.
just
So
missed?
right. So there was kind of a lot of discontent there then. So, and these are tar paper shacks. They didn't amount to nothing. And up the hill was Fort Lewis, which was all nice barracks and all that. But down there, the embarking part was nothing.
Okay. And how long do you have to stay there?
It was only there a couple days,
Okay.
and they give us clothes, they give us a rifle, and got on the boat at Pier 91, and we had a good meal there. The Navy gave us a good meal there.
All right. Now, what kind of ship did they have you on?
I think it was a converted Liberty ship.
Mm-hmm.
It make it the best way, a troop ship. Was on there for 2 weeks. It was smooth sailing. I mean, there was no big waves or nothing.
Okay, so what time of year was it then that you're making this crossing?
This was
March or?
yeah. March.
Okay, so you kind of got lucky on the weather
Right.
then.
Except when it was in Japan about 3 days, and then got back on the same ship and went from there to Busan, Korea.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had a storm. Then that ship was going up and down, and just about everybody was vomiting all over the place.
Mhm.
Man, you got to the latrine there, and you could slide of all the vomit all
Mhm.
over. I mean, just the smell of it would make you want to upchuck. But I've upchuck because just the smell would turn your
Mhm.
stomach. But I went right down to the master and said, "That's and ate again."
Mhm.
Of course, they had was all green eggs. You know, they overcooked them,
Mm-hmm.
boiled eggs, but it was food, and I got food back in my stomach.
And did that work?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't have got seasick if
it wasn't for the rest of them.
the rest of them. But
All right. Now, once you got into Busan, what was your first impression of Korea when you got there?
well, before I got there on the ship,
Mhm.
this is where I met a friend that we were inducted together.
Mhm.
And had basic training, but he ended up in the mortar company. That was the last time we had communion together there. That
Mhm.
was the last time I seen him alive.
Mhm.
And he knew he wasn't coming back. And I kept insisting, "You have a lot to come back to.
Mhm.
You have a job to come back to. I don't. I have nothing to look forward to except when I get back, and I have to look for a job."
Mhm.
But that's the way it ended up. And then we got on this train, an old steam engine,
Mhm.
and as we went up through Korea, there was pot shots. You had to stay away because there's no window. The windows were all boarded up.
Mhm.
You couldn't look out of there.
So who would be shooting at you? Were there just
North Koreans that were infiltrated in South Korea.
okay? Because by this time, the North Koreans had already been down all the way down to Busan,
Right.
and pushed all the way back
All the
up
way
north
back.
again, and then there you kind of have met in the middle again,
Right.
or near the 38th parallel.
Yeah,
but
that's-
still, as you're going through what is South Korea, there were still North Koreans
Right.
here or there, or
Right.
sympathizers or something
Mhm.
that would shoot at the troop trains going
Right.
by.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, well, I don't know, what condition was Busan in when you got there? I mean, what did that look like? Just a big harbor, or?
Yeah, that was fairly decent shape
Mm-hmm.
because they were fired upon, but it was mostly on the outskirts.
Right. Okay. Now, where did they send you then? Where's it?
About the middle of Korea, about
Okay.
38th up there. I embarked in a camp there. Then they assigned me to the 2nd Division, 38th Regiment Medical
Mm-hmm.
Company, and then from there they assigned me to a line company.
Okay, so you're then with the soldiers who would be fighting up in the front lines then.
Right.
So you're one of the medics who would have to go and rescue people if they get
Right.
hit and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Okay, now tell me a little bit about what had happened to the 2nd Division already in Korea, because they'd been there.
Yeah, they were
Earlier.
overrun,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them didn't make it. A lot of them were captured. In fact, one of our Korean veterans that we associate with right
Mhm.
now was a prisoner of war
Right.
there, and he was in that first part there.
And so they were all the way up close to the Chinese border
Yeah,
in the Alu
yeah.
River when the Chinese counterattacked, and they got caught up in that.
Right.
All right. So what was the division doing at the time that you joined it?
At that time, when I got in there, they happened to be in reserve again.
So they were taking replacements and getting
Right,
back up to strength
right.
again.
Yep.
Okay. What kind of camp were they in?
Oh,
Tents or?
yeah, everything was tense. Yeah. Or if he wasn't at that time when I got there, they had little pup tents, and
Mhm.
I shared it with 2 other guys, which I was lucky because it was pouring rain when I got there,
Mhm.
and we got out and dug a trench around it so we wouldn't be flood in the water there.
Mhm.
But eventually it cleared up and put us on the line. Then again, I had to dig a hole again.
Mhm.
But,
Okay. What impression did you have of the line company that you joined? I mean, were there a lot of new guys there, or?
Well, some of them were there quite a while already, and since I was assigned to this line company, I was also in the CP part where all the mail came in. Well, when the mail came in, they dispersed it all, and I happened to see what they call the Young Calvinist, a Christian newspaper. And I inquired about this because I am Christian Farm, and this was always sent to Christian Farm soldiers. So I inquired about this guy, and we got, in fact, I says, let me bring this to this guy here personally. That's how we got acquainted. And so otherwise you didn't really get too close to anybody because you don't know how long you're going to know them. Even though quite a few of them got close to me because they wanted to know where the medic was.
Right.
And particularly the lieutenant of this company here was a great one for that. I had to be right on his back almost. And I finally got disgusted with him because of what I heard about the guy, because he already shot himself in the hand once to get off the line. So I didn't have much about him, and anything I said, it kind of always went against my grain. We weren't real good friends, and he says, you got to be right by me all the time. I says, wait a minute, these guys here are first priority. And he didn't like that, so we didn't get along very well. So then the first sergeant says, I'll take care of you.
Yeah. Now, was the first sergeant one of these people who had been around longer and,
Right.
and was
Yeah.
kind of been through all
Yeah.
that already? Now, you mentioned that you were kind of a little bit careful not to get sort of too close to people.
Right.
Now, that's the kind of thing that you commonly hear from the veteran soldiers, the ones who've been there a while, and
Yeah.
how they regard the replacements. They don't want to
Right.
get to know them because they don't know how long they last.
Yeah,
but you were coming in as a replacement.
Yeah.
And did someone recommend that to you, or did you
No,
just
well,
think of that
it
yourself?
kind of grows on you like that, You make some friends there that you have to deal with, and so we had a runner there. He had a run. We was on the line. He had foxholes all over the place, and keep them informed. But
Right.
he was an echo from the lieutenant. Anything he said, he had to do the same thing all the time, and nobody liked him. But in a way, I felt sorry for the guy because he had no friends. And later, when we had to move off that hill, he was running to tell everybody to move out. He got captured, and they used him for bayonet practice.
Oh. And did they do that in places where you could see him, or did you just find out
No,
about that
that's
later?
where I found out later when they recaptured the hill.
Oh, so they kind of found him there then.
Found him tied up, and
afterward.
yeah.
Yeah. What was your first experience of going into combat? I mean, what happened on your first
Well,
time
the
in?
first experience was just like cops in water. When you played as a Indians, didn't think nothing of it.
What happened?
Well, I just had to stand and look around, but then they keep telling me, get down or you'll be the next casualty, which I finally realized after because there was bullets flying around. So I just sat on the hill and opened up a can of peaches and ate while they were firing back.
Now, was this during the day or at night?
This was during the day. This was on a patrol, and that's when we they were far enough away where they weren't doing anything, so they called in. They're the ones that screwed up really because we could have got. They didn't wait long enough where they could have got maybe the whole line coming down that hill. They misfired too quick.
I mean, the Chinese did it, or-
Chinese, whoever it was on
Or
that
Koreans,
hill, and they were wiped out.
So they gave away their position, and then they
Right.
became a target.
Right.
And you were far enough away that your
Yeah, so we
air
just
support
got-
artillery could come in.
Yeah.
All right. Now, were you, at that point, did you have sort of a station? Was there kind of a front line type position that you were put into?
Well,
or how was it arranged?
It was kind of a front line, but we went out to feel them out.
Mm-hmm.
Feel them out. And drew their fire.
Right. But in terms of then you come back from the patrol then?
Yeah.
No. So then you're kind of in just a network of foxholes and things like that?
Well,
or?
not on the patrol. We just
Yeah, but after you got back from the
got
patrol.
back. Yeah. Went. Well, actually, it was kind of a small village where they had huts where actually we slept in. Nobody was there. People were gone, so we took over whatever establishment they had. And then when we got back, we just horsed around. One character tried to ride a steer, which you try to do that, keep on it, just for amusement,
Right.
know. And we did a lot of crazy things, but just for amusement. But
Now, at that stage, it was maybe had kind of not fully sunk in yet that you were in the middle of a war
Right,
and it was getting
right.
dangerous. Now, so how did that change? I mean, at what point did you realize you really were in a shooting match?
well, when we went on our next patrol, that's when I really found out. Because when we were under fire and like I say, bullets and grenades were flying all over the place. And this, like I said, this one fella he was hit by a grenade right in the middle of the back. And I said he was the youngest kid of the patrol. We kind of watched over him because most of us were in the 20s, but he was like a 17-year-old. It kind of took upon us to kind of watch him a little bit. And like I say, when we regrouped again, where is he? Oh, he's back there laying.
So, but kind of, if you want to just describe the event here, you're on a patrol, you're
Yeah.
going forward, and then what happens to you at that
Right,
point?
we were ambushed with grenades and small arm fire.
Okay, and then basically the lieutenant has you evacuate, or you just start running,
Well,
or?
everybody bugged out like crazy.
Okay. So you run and you regroup, and that's the
Yeah.
point. You're counting heads or whatever,
Right.
and there's one guy missing.
Yeah.
Okay. Once they figured out there was one guy missing, then what happened?
Yeah, well, I said, he got hit back there. I said, okay, so well, that's up to you to go back there and get him.
Mm-hmm.
Which I did. And like I said, I was scared as all get out going back there.
Now, did you get shot at when you went back? I mean,
Oh,
were
yeah.
They,
Oh, yeah.
So they were still there.
There was bullets flying around there and grenades flying.
So they must have been pretty close if they're throwing grenades.
Yeah.
But they didn't hit you.
No. Well, see, their grenades were more of a compression thing. There wasn't much metal in them.
Mm-hmm.
But this one did hit, like I say, got in the middle of his back and penetrated his back quite a ways.
Okay. And how did you get this fellow out?
I put him on my shoulders and picked up his rifle. And I told him, put his arms around my neck, and off we went. Fortunately, he wasn't a very heavy person.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank the good Lord for that.
Right.
And got him out of there, and when we got it where we all were regrouped, and then they called in the aid station, and I had to take his pulse and all that, and I said, well, we got to make a stretcher here because all we had was jackets, and I told them to cut a couple poles here, and which they did, and we had the jackets carry him in that until we had reinforcements come and pick him up with a stretcher. And then we got the heck out of there. Then we came back a different route, and then we went through a minefield going back. And this guy told us where to step, and I found out later he didn't even know where these mines were. So I mean, I can thank the good Lord that He was with me all the way, with us all, really,
Because on the whole, given that you stepped into a couple of different ambushes or firefights, and at this point had only one casualty from it,
Right.
Was doing relatively well.
Right.
Okay. Now, was the sector that you were positioned in at this point, was this one where the North Koreans or Chinese were not really trying to attack at that point?
No. But we that night we could see them down there grouping together, and we knew they was going to come at night.
Right.
So we had several points. We had one point there where a 50 caliber was there, and we were all foxholes all strung along on this line here. And of course, when they were coming they did come that night, making all kinds of noise, horns and everything else, and screaming, holler, and firing. And and where we had that machine gun, they were firing back with 3 or 4 times more smaller weapons against this, because the caliber of 50, you know, had tracers going,
Right.
and they could pretty well pinpoint that thing. So they, so then the runner came and says, "Get the heck out of here! Go over to the next hill." So I did. Everybody got out of there except the runner. But see, as I was going to this other hill, a mortar shell hit me and another guy, and it just flattened me right out. It just numbed my whole body, because I was hit both shoulders, in the butt. This arm was broken. This was the only one that was unscathed.
Now, did you have shrapnel, or was it just the impact of
Yeah.
the shock?
Both,
Okay.
because I got shrapnel on this leg here. This leg was out here, like my running, and another guy next to me, he lost his foot.
You're going to lose your microphone there. All right.
He lost, well, his foot was just hanging there. And when they got to this hill here, then they start coming back, see if there was any stragglers. And somehow, my guardian angels, I can honestly say that, maybe they might disagree with me, but I was in no position to get up. If you know how your arm is when it sleeps,
Right.
my whole body was that way. Lifted me up and got me walking, and these guys picked me up as I got on this hill.
Now then, did you have to go back to an aid station in a field hospital at that point?
Right. Well, when we got on this hill, they tried to patch me up the best they could. And this was another company. Their medic had to take care of me.
Right.
And this other guy, his foot was hanging, and we had some South Koreans take us both down this hill, and one GI was following us. They had a Jeep waiting for us at the bottom of the hill. But as we were going down this hill, we were being shot at left and right. So he says, "Get way, way, way down." And there again, we were spared again, because the bullets were going by us like crazy. We got on down the hill and on this Jeep, and we were being fired as we left. And I told this GI to come, "You better come with us, because you're not going to get back up on that hill." "Oh, I'll get back." I never knew what happened to him afterwards, because the hill got completely surrounded. I found out later they were surrounded for 3 days until they regrouped and took that hill again. But I got into the aid station and to the regular medical station. They patched me up and sent me to Seoul. And I got on a Danish hospital ship. And there they operated on both my shoulders and my leg and took the shrapnel out of those 2 places and set my arm. So,
Now, how long then were you out of commission?
well, from May 17 till the middle of September.
Okay. And then how did you pass your time while you were on the hospital ship?
That was only there for a few days.
Okay. And then where did you go after that?
I went to the middle of Japan. I can't think of the name of that place. It's Japanese, but I was there the rest of the summer, all the way till except for 3 weeks in September, when I supposedly healed. Everybody in the hospital thought I was going to go home. The head honcho said otherwise. "You're going back." Now, maybe because we were hard up for medics, I don't know.
Quite possible.
But anyway, they sent me to Sasebo then to recuperate, getting back in shape. And most of the guys there were only there a couple days, because they screw up at night. They went out at night, stayed out all night. When the bed check wasn't, and they weren't there, doctor the next day says, "Off to Korea. If you can stay out all night, you can go back to your life."
Right. And Sasebo was a port and a naval base, so you could probably
Right.
get in trouble relatively easily there.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was real easy, because the girls were fluently there, and that's, of course, that's what they were there for. But I stayed there for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the doctor, says, is there any chance of me staying here since I was a medic anyway?
Mm-hmm.
He says, no. He says, I have to let you go. There again, they were pressing for medics
Right,
because,
right.
see, a medic there, you could not wear a red star on your helmet because it'd be the first ones to
You'd be the
pick
target.
off. Yeah.
And also you mentioned, I think, as a medic, you also carried a weapon, too.
Yeah,
So you would look basically like any other
Right.
soldier, pretty much.
but I never used it. I never used it. But
All right. Now, did they return you back to the same company that you
Yeah.
had been assigned to?
when I left Sasebo, they went back to the same routine medical company, went back to the Charlie company again, which they already had a medic, replace.
Right.
And we got back right away. We got in another firefight. Well, they was trying to take another hill is what it was. And we had quite a few casualties there. And some of the guys that I knew before, this time got hit. And
Right.
they were coming through there quite frequently. And I had one guy where I almost had it was right to, hit him in the jaw because he was going into shock and you had no control with him.
Right.
I managed to get him on his way, but I had no control of him. Another one come in there, completely shot up, laughing, I'll get out. Says, I got my $1 million wound. I knew he was going back. It took that. Anybody got hit usually knew it was serious enough that they wouldn't have to go back.
Right. Now, was this really kind of your first experience to kind of do the full job of the medic, where you had a bunch of guys that you had to deal with, and as opposed to just a single guy that you had helped earlier?
Well, this time I was helping out more
Yeah,
or less.
yeah.
And the other one was, we're right in the midst of it, whereas I was kind of a relay over here. If
Right.
they got this far here, I'll check them over.
Okay.
Any more, take care of their wounds a little better and on their way. But when I got back there, I also had to tag dead bodies. And I lost my friend when I come back there that I met earlier.
Right.
He got stepped on a personnel mine. But it was funny that way because there was 6 guys that stepped on personnel mines because only it has to take one to do that.
Right.
Others are going to try and help them, and they end up being the same way. And they were out there for a couple of days. It was all blue. You couldn't even recognize them. But I still had to write out the tag and,
Yep.
and what hill it was and all this.
Okay. Now, how long then are you back up on the front lines or rotating
Well,
on
it
it?
wasn't long after that they kept me behind. Says, well, your time here is 6 months. Of course, most of us, I was in a hospital. Actually,
Right.
I didn't have much line
Yeah.
time, but they looked at it different. So I ended up being a guard, and that, well, it was all right. At least it was off the line.
Yeah. So were you guarding an aid station or a field hospital? Or?
Well, just more or less the medical station way back. Forgot about this. And I'll hang on to it. And this hand here is partially nerve was severed there. And it got awful ice cold. And this particular night, it got ice cold. This was in October. Or no, it was already getting in November. So I went up to the doctor, and this doctor here was hard, awful hard on anybody coming with ailments. Could just soon look at you. You don't have no ailment, it'd throw you out. And I bothered him before. He says, well, this time, he says, I want you to just check my hand. Just 5 minutes, and then you won't see me again. Well, he awed around and finally said, okay. So I give him my hand, and he felt it. Ice cold here, warm here. He says, how in the heck did you get back here again? You should have never came back. Pack your bag, you're getting the heck out of here. He released me and papers on my way.
All right. And then where did you go from there?
Went to Seoul, then again back to Japan,
Mm-hmm.
in the hospital there. So that was fine. I was back in Japan again. But I got to know one of the doctors. We became real good friends
Mm-hmm.
there. And he was about ready to sign me to do something. And this doctor, that was a real good friend of mine, had a severe attack of appendicitis. And he almost died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was recuperating. They took care of him. And the head honcho there says, he's going to send him home. He says, what can I do for you? I said, I want to do something for you. He says, you see that young man over there? Send him home with me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he hauled around and says, send him home with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on my way home, and I can thank that doctor again.
All right. I'm going to go back to the company you served with. Before the interview, you were telling me a little bit about the company commander that you were with. You mean the lieutenant in the platoon you were assigned to, you were not real wild about. But the company commander, what sort of character was he?
He was a good guy. He was understanding. He didn't pull no bones. You know, you do what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I say, he kept a lot of them alive before.
What could a commander in that kind of position do that would actually help men survive? And what would he do that would make any particular difference when you're ordered, go here, go there?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, but he seemed to understand, but he also meant what he said to you, and just his experience along, you could tell he knew what he was doing. Whereas, like I said, that lieutenant, I could say
Mm-hmm.
he shot himself in the hand again
Mm-hmm.
to get off the line. Now, what happened to him after that, I have no idea. I'm sure this time they didn't pull no bones about it and send him back to the States.
Mm-hmm. So you saw both an example of a very good officer on the one
Right.
hand and a not so good one on the other.
Yeah, he was gun-ho as long as there was nothing going on.
Right.
Because he made a shave up there, too. Now, how are you going to shave? I don't have no water
Mhm.
up there. You can't heat it. So you mean you had to use a razor on...
You just had to scrape a razor across
Right,
your face?
yeah.
Ugh. That's pretty bad.
Because most of them, you don't shave up there.
Right.
Unless you get it in reserve where you can have all that stuff, too.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was up there already a month, and I took off my winter underwear because it got too hot to wear, it could stand up by itself.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now, as a medic, did you also have to deal with people who had different kinds of just miscellaneous illnesses? I mean, if they got sick,
Oh, yeah,
or they had,
sure.
or did you have like troubles with their
pill
feet and things
pushers,
like that? Yeah. So.
give them an aspirin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what they call a pill pusher. I mean, give them an aspirin.
But did they get more serious stuff in a pneumonia or trench foot or other things like that that you couldn't treat so well?
No, at that time they had pretty well under control, because before that, a lot of them lost their toes
Mm-hmm.
because they were frozen.
Right.
And that was pretty well taken care of, even though we still had combat boots on, because some of the Chinese that were captured or killed had GI boots on. It's the first thing they took off was their feet, because
Mhm.
they came there in tennis shoes,
Right.
and those feet froze right away.
But by the time you got there, the Army was supplying the soldiers with most of the kind of equipment they should have, and the right kind of material, as opposed to maybe
Well, the
earlier.
boots, they still had the regular Second War combat boots yet.
What would have been better?
Well, the boots that they have now, with the insulated and
Okay.
everything else.
Rather-
Which they came eventually there.
Mhm.
And you always, each war, you come up with new stuff, because they learn by experience.
Right.
But,
I handle that. Okay. Now, at the point then when the doctor manages to arrange it so you can go back to the States, now do you get discharged when you get back to the States, or
No,
do you have to
no.
stay in the Army for a while longer?
no, when I got back in the States, about the first part of December, I ended up at Percy Jones Army Hospital in Battle Creek.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the rest of my time there, and in February of '52, then they operated on this arm here to try to get that nerve partially back again. And I stayed there, had a couple 30-day leaves,
Mm-hmm.
which you normally wouldn't get. and the hospital was full. I mean, they had to have my bed.
Right.
But I ended up back there again, and I went from Percy Jones to Fort Custer, and that's when I got there. That's the first time where I was stuck on KP.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't do that neither. For the simple reason that I got stuck on it, because I wanted to be home on a weekend, and I got a pass. But this fellow down there, the sergeant, said, "You're on guard duty here tonight." So I paid somebody to take my place, and he was willing to take my money.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to do it. When I got back, he didn't do it.
Oh.
So I was in hot water. That's the first time I was ever in hot water.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was so mad at me. He says, "Well, he was supposed to do my duty. It's not your responsibility." I got my money back. I had to threaten him to get my money back. But where time I had to deal with him was only a couple days. Boy, how I kept my fingers crossed that my papers had come through to
Right.
go over to the other section there. Well, he was really going to give me the dirtiest job he could find. So he went over to the mess hall. So he went to the mess sergeant there. He says, "This guy here, put him on the grease pits. I want you to have him clean the grease pits." He says, "Okay, I'll take care of it." Well, I found out neither one could stand each other.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "As soon as he goes away, get the heck out of here, out of sight." So I mean, I got out of it. I was fortunate there. But then I got my papers, and we went over to another section of the camp to wait out till the final papers came. And there again, I was kind of shifty over there. Every day they would get out there. This group here goes over here,
Mm-hmm.
do something over here, and this group goes over there. Well, I'll get in this group. They were assigned over there. Then I walk away and go back to the barracks. Well, I could only do that once to be barracks guard. And so I only got away with staying there in the barracks. So I had to figure out a way to get away from the other ones out of this duty. I was kind of a conniver then.
Mm-hmm.
But my other buddy, that we were in basic training together, and we also were in the same outfit overseas, he managed to come through it with just shrapnel in his arm. And he was in charge of a barracks over there. So I'd go over there and sit in his barracks, because he wasn't on any DAT. He would just monkey around and just shoot the breeze. So I managed to stay out of there for a while. But whereas the rest, I mean, I could have gone on these the details weren't much, because just to keep you busy.
Right. Well, at this point, did you figure that you really kind of done your part already and it was just time to leave? Yeah.
I was on our way out, and we could go home on weekends, and there's only a couple weekends where we could get away like that, and it was on our way out.
So how long then were you hanging around Fort Custer?
Not too long.
Okay.
No, last part of July of '52, and a lot of those guys that we had basic training together, some of them come back,
Mm-hmm.
but we were all in different outfits. And one of them was a cook, and we'd go over to the mess hall at night if we want to make a sandwich or something. We'd do that. But it was a kind of easy way to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Ones that were in Korea with us, and ones that went to Germany were also getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them went to Germany, who happened to be a good friend of mine. He was one of the best con men I ever knew. But especially with women, boy, I'm telling you, he had the gift of gab and the looks.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, to me, he was a good friend, but he was always wants to, I want to see if I can get you drunk. He always wanted to make sure. It didn't take much for me to get drunk. Well, at least I'd get silly. I'd do stupid things. But that didn't last very long, because we all eventually
Right.
found our woman of choice and got married and all went our different ways.
All right. Now, once you're finally discharged, then you come back home again, what do you do then once you're out?
Well, once I got out, what I did, I went back to painting. I seen an old 37 Chevrolet pickup truck, car lot. I bought that, put some racks on it, bought some ladders, and I had the jobs. I had no problem getting jobs. I had more jobs than I could handle. And that kept me out of mischief for the rest of the summer and part of the fall. In the fall, I would look for a job inside, which we got. I had to work for Chris Craft there in Porter. They built small motors.
Right.
And he was partial to anybody who was in the service. Anybody walked in there was in the service, you got a job. So I worked there until they finally had to close the place up because they were infringing on somebody else's motor, so they finally closed the place up.
Okay. Now, did you kind of settle into a regular career at a certain point?
No, I just from job to job. I painted when I could paint, and job finally I went into the sound business of hi-fi and commercial sound. I worked for a guy for a while, and his other help decided we should go on our own. And he said, I'm not ready to go on my own. He says, I don't know enough to go on my own. But these other two knew more about the business than what I did. The only part that I knew the best of was the construction, because I had some experience in the construction end of it. And that was an asset to me. But as a technical end of it, I wasn't very good at that. But we broke away from this company. He had so much work, but he didn't want to hire any help. We'd be jumping from job to job, starting, but never finished. And that's how we got started. We finished a lot of his jobs.
Okay. Now, is this sort of installing sound systems in large
systems,
buildings or
churches,
PA systems,
schools,
churches?
and-
Okay.
yeah. And we opened up the front. He had hi-fi. That was when hi-fi started. You know, your phonographs and speakers, and tape recorders, and all that. Then it went into the dual stuff, you know.
Right, stereo, right.
Yeah. Then I got to the point where one partner was little rambunctious. He was a nervous wreck. He could not stand pressure. We were under pressure all the time because, you know, being new, we had robbed Peter to pay Paul, and just that's the way we were going. And we were drawing very, very little, just enough to get by. For I was still single yet, and my parents helped me survive. But when I got married and pulled out eventually, because he started insulting my family, my wife, and said, well, I'm getting out. And they found, told them I'm going to sell my share of it to somebody else. Well, they didn't want that particular guy in there. All I was interested is the money part. So they found a party that they wanted.
Right.
And got my share out. But within 6 months, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Because they started hiring people here and getting bigger wages, and I always kept it down to the nitty-gritty, just get by whatever we can. It's always money went back into paying bills. And finally somebody else bought them out. That's how they got out of it. They took over all their debts and they become part of the other. And this guy that we had trouble with, out he went. He was no longer there. But I enjoyed that. I wish I could have stayed in it, but it wasn't the Lord's will, I guess.
So what did you do after that?
Well, then I worked for another guy in the sound business for a while. And then I worked for my wife's uncle when he was kind of an electrical company, but they dealt mostly in rebuilding machinery, and particularly in plants that did chrome plating.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they really wanted to get into. And then, well, that wasn't very profitable, but back to painting. In fact, I worked for a painter for a while, then I finally ended up working at W.W. Granger Electrical Supply House. That was my last job, and I stayed there until I retired.
All right. Now, to look back on the whole thing now, how do you think your time in the service wound up affecting you?
Oh, it was a good experience. I'm not condemning that, because right now, as I think back, my later years here, the Lord spared me, and He had something for me to do yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now what we're doing, the group of the
Right.
Korean veterans, we're ministering to the guys over in the vets place.
Mm-hmm.
One day a month, and we're going to the high schools now
Right.
and tell them about Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get up there, I tell them here, I'm only here for the grace of God. The other ones that didn't make it, they're the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to get that across and explain what we did in Korea and all that.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't started yet this fall, but we have several schools lined up to start here pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's important work to do, and it's good to get these stories recorded however we're doing it. And that's, of course, part of why you're in here today.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to thank you for coming in and doing that and talking to me today.
Well, I feel I'm in my later years, and at least I should thank the good Lord that He spared me.
Mm-hmm.
And I emphasize too that these young kids, don't forget these people that are your relatives overseas that
Right.
pray for them. As often as you can, don't forget them. Like they did in Vietnam, they forgot these people here, and a lot of them lost their lives, and we never thanked them for coming back.
Now, when you came back from Korea, was anybody interested in finding out what you did or what happened, or did they just ignore it all?
Well, the church was behind me 100%, and my parents and relatives. That's what kept me alive.
Right.
And, well, after we were out, we got away from it.
Mm-hmm.
We forgot about it. But now that I'm older, I've seen a lot of my friends pass away now, and it's time I get back where I should be.
Right. And get the story told.
I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.